Hi, welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about the rapidly escalating situation in the war in Iran that is now threatening two of the world's most important shipping routes and could push oil prices sharply higher to levels that we have never seen before. Because right now, we're seeing mounting evidence that Iran not only is tightening its grip on global trade through the Strait of Hormuz, but is also considering doing so with another vital trade route. And the consequences could be enormous. But before we get into the details of all of this, can I ask anybody that hasn't subscribed yet to please hit that subscriber button? It doesn't take you more than a second and it really helps me with the algorithm and puts a smile on my face. So let's start with the latest developments. A Turkish tanker has reportedly been hit by drones near Istanbul, another clear sign that shipping routes linked to this conflict are becoming increasingly dangerous. And this is not an isolated incident. We are now seeing a pattern of disruption, intimidation, and direct attacks on energy infrastructure and shipping, and that's having a real impact on global markets. But the biggest issue, as I mentioned at the start of today's video, is the Strait of Hormuz. This is one of the most critical choke points in the whole of the global economy. Around 20% of the world's oil and gas passes through this narrow stretch of water every single day. Well, it did before this war started. It's not now because it's not safe. There are growing reports of Iranian harassment of ships, potential mines being deployed, and a significant increase in military tension all across this area. And the United States has made it very clear what it wants. It wants the Strait of Hormuz to be fully opened, fully secure and safe for tanker traffic. But Iran is simply refusing to agree to that, and we're now at a complete impasse. Donald Trump has put forward proposals, his 15-point plan, aimed at stabilising the situation. But Iran has effectively said that there will be no deal struck with the United States. And that creates a very dangerous dynamic because the control of the Strait of Hormuz is Iran's strongest leverage point. It's the Achilles heel of the global economy. At the same time, the United States is currently increasing its military presence in the region. And this is where things start to become particularly concerning. We are now seeing reports that the US has deployed Marines and other ground-capable forces into the region, not just naval assets or air support, but troops trained specifically for boots-on-the-ground operations. And that raises a very serious question. Why deploy those types of forces unless a ground operation is currently being considered? There's now growing speculation that the US could be preparing for a potential invasion of Kark Island, which is absolutely critical to Iran's economy. Around 90% of Iran's oil exports pass through that single location every single day. And if that facility was targeted or taken offline, it would effectively shut down Iran's ability to generate oil revenues. But the consequences of that would be enormous because any form of ground invasion would represent a major escalation and would almost certainly trigger retaliation from Iran, not just locally on Kark Island, but across the whole of the Middle East. And this is where the economic risks really start to build. Because it's now been reported that the Trump administration has been analysing scenarios where oil prices surge to $200 per barrel, which is a level that we've never seen before globally. And that tells you everything that you need to know. There is clearly contingency planning taking place behind the scenes for a worst case outcome. And if we do see a ground operation targeting Kark Island, then a spike in oil prices to levels that we've never even imagined is not just possible, it becomes a very real probability. But the situation doesn't stop at the Strait of Hormuz. There's also now a second major flashpoint developing, and this could be just as damaging. This is the Bab al-Mandab Strait, located between Yemen on the Arabian Peninsula and Djibouti and Eritrea on the Horn of Africa. There's a narrow but absolutely critical shipping lane that connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden and ultimately links Asia to Europe via the Suez Canal. Roughly 10% of global trade passes through this route every single day, and that includes not just oil, but consumer goods, foods, raw materials, everything that keeps the global economy moving. Now, what makes this situation particularly dangerous is the role of the Houthis in Yemen. The Houthis are an Iranian-backed militant group that control large parts of Yemen, including key areas along the Red Sea coastline. They're not internationally recognised government of Yemen, but they do have de facto control over significant territory and have been fighting a long-running civil war. And crucially, they've already demonstrated their ability to disrupt global shipping. Over the past couple of years, Houthi forces have launched attacks on commercial vessels, fired missiles towards ships, and forced major shipping companies to reroute away from the Red Sea. At times, this has effectively reduced traffic through Bab al-Mandab Strait and caused delays, higher shipping costs, and increased insurance premiums. So this is not just a theoretical risk, it's already happened before. And now Iran is threatening to escalate this further, which means we could be looking at a scenario where both of the world's most important energy and trade choke points are under simultaneous pressure from Iran and Iran-backed forces. And this is where the geography becomes incredibly important. Iran sits right next to the Strait of Hormuz, giving it direct control over one of the most critical oil routes in the world. At the same time, through its support of the Houthis in Yemen, it has indirect influence over the Bab al-Mandab Strait. So effectively, Iran has the ability to apply pressure on two key points in the global supply chain, which relates to around 30% of all traffic. And that's a very powerful position to be in, because even without a full-scale military confrontation, simply threatening disruption at these locations is enough to move markets. If both of these routes are compromised at the same time, the impact on the global economy would be severe. Shipping would be delayed or rerouted, costs would surge, and supply chains would come under significant strain. Markets are already reacting to this risk because if supply is restricted, tankers can't pass, insurance costs surge, and shipping routes are disrupted. And the result of all of that would be higher oil prices, higher inflation, and slower economic growth globally. So the overall summary of today's video is this. We're continuing to see a clear escalation in the war in Iran. The United States wants the Strait of Hormuz to be made safe and open for global trade. However, Iran understands that this choke point is its most powerful negotiating tool and is using it to apply maximum pressure. At the same time, there is now a very real risk of further escalation through potential US ground operations targeting key Iranian oil infrastructure such as Kark Island. And alongside that, we're seeing increasing threats to a second major trade route in Bab al-Mandab Strait, where Iran has influence through Houthi forces that have already shown they can disrupt global shipping. All of this is feeding into a glowing risk that oil prices could spike to record and potentially astronomical levels. And if that happens, the impact on the global economy will be severe, not just for a few days or a few weeks, but potentially for the rest of 2026 and even beyond. Because as things stand right now, there is no obvious path to a peaceful resolution. So hopefully you've enjoyed today's video, you found it useful, informative, and most importantly, thought-provoking. If you've liked what I've said, or maybe you didn't quite like what I said, but you found it interesting, then please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Don't forget I'm currently running my competition where you can win my property or a cash alternative prize. Really is quite an exciting thing. So if you'd like to get involved with that, please scan the QR code on the screen now or click the link in the description below. I'll keep you posted on any significant news and developments as soon as they occur. But thank you so much to everybody that's helping me in other ways. If you've bought me a coffee or sent me a YouTube super thanks or signed up as a patron or a member, thank you so much. Really appreciate that support. Helps to keep me motivated. And here's something to put a smile on your face.